Phentermine. Why is no one talking about it? Not even her lawyer. By now, you may have heard that Alexee's lawyer is aiming to hold the ER staff accountable for the tragic loss of her baby. The lawyer contends that the ER staff's alleged actions, which include their delayed communication about Alexee's pregnancy test results, their administration of medication to her without first knowing her health status, and permitting her to use the bathroom knowing she was pregnant. All of these things constitute a case of medical malpractice, according to her attorney, Gary Mitchell.
Yes, the nurse had to unhook her from the IV that was delivering morphine to her, and at the time she didn't know this, but it turns out 0.19 milligrams per milliliter of morphine to the fetus, to her baby, and they unhook her from that so she can run down the hall to a public bathroom, not one of the private bathrooms in the emergency rooms, but this is in the hallway of the emergency department of the hospital. She has to run down to a public bathroom to go to the bathroom. That nurse at the time that unhooked her knew she was pregnant. And the emergency room doctor sitting at the nurse's station knew she was pregnant, and the nurses at the nursing station knew she was pregnant and watched her run down to the bathroom. The other thing that everybody keeps forgetting, all this time they continue to give her morphine, knowing at 12:51, we have a pregnant woman, and you continue to give her morphine? Excuse me, you gave her morphine for 48 more minutes after that. She and her baby. So no wonder we sued for malpractice.
The toxicology report on the baby revealed the existence of caffeine, morphine, and phentermine in the baby's system. It is clear that the source of the morphine was the hospital. They administered it to alleviate her back pain. Phentermine is a well-known medication used for weight loss. And Alexee has openly admitted to discontinuing her birth control pills and instead opting for diet pills. So this explains phentermine being in the baby's system.
She did at one point in time, when the ultrasound tech was in the room with her, ask if there was anything. She pretty much said, would there be any bad outcomes if she had stopped taking one medication and stopped taking another? And I said, well, what medications are you talking about? She said, well, what would happen if I stopped taking birth control and started taking weight loss medications? And I was like, I don't know.
As per Alexee's lawyer, none of her actions had any impact on the final outcome. The lawyer firmly asserts that his client bears no responsibility in this case, underscoring that Alexee was in a state of deep shock during the delivery of her baby. He attributes all of Alexee's subsequent actions to this sudden and overpowering emotional state, and he has initiated a wrongful death suit that specifically focuses on the ER team and their decision to administer morphine to Alexee.
They gave her major medication. Some of that medication certainly dangerous to a unborn child or fetus, and contraindicated if you're pregnant. Certainly contraindicated if you're going to breastfeed later on. And that medication was started without finding out whether or not she was pregnant. And the child, we know, had morphine in the system. It only got that morphine because the hospital gave it to him. And the hospital didn't stop the medication after they learned that she was pregnant. They didn't take the IV out then. They waited 48 minutes and continued to give her not only morphine, but sodium chloride, that's salt. That's not unusual, and that should be. Ketorolac, Zofran, and morphine.
But these aren't the only contraindicated medications that were in Alexee's system at the time of her delivery. One medication, interestingly, fails to make the lawyer's list every time he seizes the opportunity to talk about the case. It's a glaring issue, an elephant in the room, if you will. The weight loss medication that Alexee herself admits to taking over an extended period of time, well before her ER visit, doesn't seem to ever make the list. If we look again at the baby's toxicology report, we see that he had more phentermine in his system than morphine, yet this medication consistently goes unmentioned by the lawyer. You might wonder why he deliberately avoids mentioning it. I believe it's because Alexee's use of phentermine has the potential to completely upend his entire defense strategy. We're going to get into it, but first be sure to click the like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on updates to this story, trending topics, and so much more. Now let's get into it. We can establish that Alexee had indeed been taking phentermine over an extended period. First, she openly admitted to discontinuing her birth control, transitioning to diet pills. Her statement about this to Nurse Elizabeth can be further corroborated by the baby's toxicology report, which indicates a presence of phentermine. If we look closer, we can see that the toxicology report reveals that the baby had a higher level of phentermine in his system as compared to morphine. This suggests that Alexee had initiated the use of phentermine well before her visit to the ER. And although Alexee's lawyer wants to point the finger at morphine, medical professionals have come forward to say not so fast. They say morphine is not a deviation from the standard of practice and that it is administered even when it's known that a woman is pregnant to help her alleviate severe back pain.
And the claim that 0.19 nanograms of morphine was the causative agent. Keep in mind that a nanogram is 1/billionth of a gram. This was 1900ths of 1/billionth of a gram of morphine in this infant system. It is absolutely not a deviation from the standard of care in the emergency room to administer morphine to someone who is known to be pregnant. Morphine is used all the time for women who are pregnant in the emergency room setting where it's monitored for things like extraordinarily back pain. So the fact that there was a fraction of 1/billionth of a gram of morphine found in this child's system did not kill this child. And I don't think the defense can possibly find a board-certified forensic pathologist who can say this baby was killed by the hospital.
So why is Attorney Mitchell not pointing the finger at phentermine? Why is it that when he discusses all of the contraindicated medications Alexee had in her system at the time of her delivery, does he not mention the elephant in the room? That is, phentermine. Ride with me here. Phentermine is not recommended for pregnant women or anyone breastfeeding under any circumstances, primarily due to concerns about its potential effects on the developing fetus. Additionally, phentermine can increase heart rate and blood pressure, which might pose risks to both the mother and unborn child. And because of the limited data, there is uncertainty about whether phentermine exposure during pregnancy could increase risks of birth defects or other adverse outcomes. If we were to do an online search for the medication phentermine, at first glance, one might think it's readily available over the counter, as there are so many sites that seem to carry this medication. But if we look closer at each of these brands, you will see there are slight changes in the spelling. These brands have done this as a marketing ploy to make unsuspecting people think that what they are buying is phentermine, but what they are actually buying is an alternative, a supplement that has been posed to look like phentermine. Even a forensic pathologist who admittedly did a quick search for the medication was duped by this.
Is it Phentermine? I don't.
Yep, it's phentermine.
Phentermine, 420 nanograms per milliliter. Is that a lot? Should someone who's pregnant be taking that? Can that impact the child as well?
I mean, anything the mom takes impacts the child. You have to remember that. Now, this is normally a diet drug. If you recall back in the day, fen, that sort of combination that's no longer used for other medical complications, that it was part of that combination. So, why is she on a diet drug while she's pregnant? It's probably to conceal the pregnancy. I bet her friends or family asked, she's pretty petite from her pictures and even now, right? She's only 5 feet tall and she looks like a slim build. So I'm sure her stomach became prominent. Now, maybe she's saying I'm gaining weight and that's why the Phentermine's in her system. This is available. I even checked before I logged on. Like online, you can buy it without a prescription. So it's a traditional diet drug.
Copycat marketers are so good at this, anyone can be fooled into thinking that Phentermine is available over the counter. It's not. Take a look here. The real Phentermine requires a prescription. If you look at these brands, you'll see that they've slightly changed the spelling to make one believe that they're actually buying Phentermine. You see Phentermine, Phent 37, Phentra 37 Max, Phentermine. Now, looking at the ingredients, one quickly sees it's not the popular weight loss medication, but instead a supplement posing as the original medication. Why is it only available through prescription? Because just like morphine, Phentermine is a controlled substance in the United States, which means that its distribution is regulated to ensure that it is used properly. It also means that it is subject to prescription requirements. Only a doctor can prescribe Phentermine. Do you see where I'm headed with this? Alexee would have needed a prescription for this medication. But in order to get a prescription for Phentermine, a doctor would require certain tests before prescribing it. The prescribing doctor would have measured her heart rate and blood pressure because Phentermine has the propensity to raise both. So someone with high blood pressure would not be a good candidate for this medication. But more relevant to this case is the pregnancy test that Alexee would have also had to take prior to being prescribed this medicine. Unlike morphine, which according to medical professionals is commonly given to pregnant women, Phentermine is contraindicated for anyone who is pregnant or breastfeeding. That means that universally, doctors would not prescribe this medicine for someone who was pregnant under any circumstances. So why would Alexee's lawyer point the finger at a commonly used medicine while omitting the fact that Alexee took a medicine that is expressly prohibited for pregnant women? Wouldn't you expect to see that doctor listed on the wrongful death lawsuit? But why don't we? So far, Alexee's lawyer places blame solely on the ER team and the morphine they administered. I think his failure to mention Phentermine, coupled with there not being any other doctor listed on the wrongful death suit, is revealing something really important. Maybe there was no doctor to sue in addition to the hospital. Maybe Alexee's source for this medication was a friend, maybe her mother. Or perhaps she found them from a questionable online source. If Alexee purchased this medication from a reputable online source, a prescription would have been required. There are some doctors who sell this medication online, but they require an appointment to determine if the medication is appropriate for the patient. So even in an online transaction, Phentermine would require the approval of a doctor. So, where did Alexee get this medication? If Alexee got this medication somehow on her own without a doctor's approval, then her lawyers claim that a stillbirth was caused by the cocktail of medications given to her by the ER team would become moot. If he's building his entire defense strategy on the premise that a contraindicated medication caused the stillbirth, then Alexee's independent decision to take Phentermine would potentially place her in an equal, if not primary, position of responsibility for her baby's heartbreaking outcome. Would a jury be more likely to believe morphine was the cause of her baby's death or Phentermine? I think we know the answer. And even worse, if Alexee did any research on this medication, she would have seen that its use is prohibited while pregnant. But even if she herself never did any research on this medication, wouldn't the warning have been visible on the bottle? These warnings are required by law to be displayed on the label. And Phentermine's warning reads, do not use if you are pregnant, suspect that you are pregnant, or while breastfeeding. Consult your doctor or pharmacist. If Alexee didn't know she was pregnant, she, at the very least, suspected it. But there's more. Alexee gave us a pretty obvious clue that she not only decided to take this medication without a doctor's approval, but that she also knew that it could potentially harm her baby. And how do we suspect she knew? Because within minutes of being told they found her baby in the trash can and that law enforcement would be detaining her, her mind went straight to the Phentermine. You might ask, how do I know?
She didn't say anything about what had happened. She was just essentially worried that she was just going to get in trouble.
So that's what I mean. Were those the questions she was asking?
Like so, what's going to happen to me? Like that kind of thing.
Did she ever ask about the baby?
No.
Not once.
And so her focus was her getting in trouble. And anything other that she talked to you about?
She did at one point in time when the ultrasound tech was in the room with her ask if there was anything. She pretty much said, would there be any like bad outcomes if she had stopped taking one medication and stopped taking another? And I said, well, what medications are you talking about? She said, well, what would happen if I stopped taking birth control and started taking weight loss medications? And I was like, I don't know.
It's an odd question.
I thought so.
That's right. Just 10 minutes after being told she was being detained, the ultrasound tech entered the room, and Alexee asked Nurse Elizabeth about potential bad outcomes that she could face as a result of the diet pills. Did you hear that? Just minutes after the police detained her under the suspicion that she murdered her baby in the bathroom and threw him into the trash, Alexee was worried about weight loss pills. She was just caught putting her baby into the trash just minutes prior, and this is what's on her mind. While the question seemed strange to Nurse Elizabeth and the police at the time of their interviews, it now makes total sense. This question shows consciousness of guilt, like many perpetrators are being caught today, going to Google to ask it questions specifically related to their crime. Alexee did the same thing, only she didn't ask Google that night. She asked Nurse Elizabeth. This question gives us a glimpse into Alexee's state of mind, and its timing, being so close to the act that got her into trouble, indicates a clear sense of guilt. It is much like her hypothetically searching online for ways to terminate the pregnancy, only she asked Nurse Elizabeth. Given all that had just happened, the pills were of concern to her because of their relevance to what had just transpired in the bathroom. If the pills held no concern for her, the thought would be farthest from her mind. And had a doctor prescribed the pills, endorsing their safety during her pregnancy, then this question would be completely irrelevant, as her decision to take them would have relied on the doctor's advice. Her question suggests that not only did she take this medication on her own, but that she is now worried that she could have bad legal outcomes from its use. Sadly, it also hints that Alexee likely expected that if she took these pills, that the baby would indeed not be breathing at birth. He was a breathing baby, according to the autopsy report, yet she persisted in hiding him even after his arrival. Alexee's lawyer's deliberate choice to avoid discussing this topic is glaringly intentional, but regrettably, it only accentuates the unspoken aspects he's leaving unaddressed. What do you think about this case? Do you think Alexee got the diet pills from her doctor? If so, do you think he prescribed them without testing her for pregnancy? Do you think the diet pills will play a key role in her trial? If so, why? Let's continue the discussion in the comments section below. I'll meet you there.